Hello everyone, it's Glenda and welcome back to Creative Grandma. My channel is all about crochet. I love crochet. I promote crochet. This video is a special video for one of my subscribers who helps me in the background with some of my business pages and helping me with my channel in other ways. So thank you, Anne. Anne has asked me to bring you a video regarding how to start learning the Tunisian crochet stitch and, just start with the basics. Now, I did a video a while back and I thought, maybe I need to refresh that video and bring another one to you. So I want to start this video with a little bit explaining about Tunisian crochet. Tunisian crochet is using a long hook, and it's a cross between knitting and crocheting. You put all your loops on the hook and then you take all your loops off the hook, and this is how you create the pattern. There is a large variety of Tunisian crochet stitches out there, but for this video we're just going to stick with the basic beginning simple stitch. Is what the first step of anyone wanting to learn how to do the Tunisian crochet stitch would learn to do. So for this video, I'm just going to go over the basics of what someone needs to learn in order to start learning the Tunisian stitch. So if you're really interested in that stitch, it's best to start with the basics and learn the simple stitch first. So in this video, I'm going to show you, you're going to make your chain, and then I'm going to show you two different ways to start that foundation chain when you do that first row. You can do it the easy way of just going into the top loop of that chain, or you can do it and take a little more time and go in that back bump, which creates a wonderful edging on the bottom to make it easier to do your border. So I'm going to show you both methods of doing the first row. I'm going to explain how to do the Tunisian simple stitch, which is the first stitch you should really learn if you want to learn how to start doing any type of Tunisian crochet. When we get that done, I'm also going to show you how to fasten off your work. When you do Tunisian crochet, you start and you put all your loops on your hook, and then you do a second part of the row where you take all your loops off. So when you want to finish your design, you need to finish that pattern and fasten off all those loops. So I'll show you how to slip stitch those loops off of that final row of your pattern or Afghan or whatever you want to make. So Anne, this video is for you. So let's grab your yarn. I'm going to use a 4 medium weight yarn. I'm going to use a size 10J Afghan hook. You can use whatever yarn or whatever hook size you have in your house, because this video is just to learn the technique. So grab your yarn, grab your hook. I'll be back and let me show you how to do this fascinating stitch. Before we begin, I just want to show you some samples here. This is my sample of just the plain old simple Tunisian stitch. The Tunisian stitch, you can see, is worked using vertical strands which create your stitches. So each vertical strand of yarn here is a stitch, and it just creates this nice, thick, dense fabric. And most of the time, this stitch is used for doing cross-stitch Afghans. You can also change the pattern on your design by changing colors and creating the pattern in your work. So let me show you a sample of what I mean. Here's a sample of a blanket I made a long time ago. I found this in my work piles. I keep everything, every sample, just so it helps me if I'm trying to design something. So this little block was in a clown blanket I made, and you can see how easy it is when you just change those colors and you can form any design. And a lot of people say, how can I make a blanket with a certain graft or a certain pattern? Well, this is where you just use graph paper. Just color that design with graph paper, and every square represents a stitch, and you can create any type of wonderful design. And this is just made using the simple Tunisian stitch, and all you're doing is changing colors. The other way to use this Tunisian simple stitch, and here is a leaflet I done for Annie's Crochet. And these are all Tunisian Afghans. This leaflet is available at Annie's, but I just wanted to show you some of the beautiful works that you can create learning this Tunisian stitch. And it's just such an easy stitch. Now, some of these other techniques are a little more advanced, but I just want to get you started with learning how to do Tunisian crochet. So here's one Afghan. I'm just going to show some of these off. I just want to show you how many different ways that Tunisian crochet can be used. This Afghan, you're using the simple basic simple stitch that you're going to learn today, and then later on I'll do a video and show you how to cross stitch onto the simple stitch. And then here is another Tunisian crochet stitch. That's the honeycomb stitch. You can learn all these stitches. It just takes time, but first it's best to start with the simple stitch. Here is another Tunisian crochet Afghan, and you can see that this is made on the lines of this panel here. You start with that simple stitch that I'm going to show you how to do today, and then you cross stitch these patterns on, which makes it fun because this is so easy. You sit there, you watch TV, you whip up your panels, and then you can cross stitch the design onto the panel. Or if you want to use yarn bobbins, you can go ahead and you can change those colors as you're crocheting up the panel and work it in. This one was a cross stitch pattern. Here is another design, and again, all these panels are worked exactly like this one. They're all the simple stitch, and then you just join those panels together using popcorns or other stitches, whatever way you want to join them together. So let me show you another one. It's just fascinating all the different ways you can do a beautiful Afghan using this simple stitch. Now here I used the simple stitch, but I done the Afghan in blocks. If you like to do a take-along project where you want to just make smaller squares, you can make those smaller squares up, and then I joined this together using like a granny stitch style joining method. And you can use any colors, but you have to start with learning this stitch. So this is another possible way of turning this stitch into blocks. Here is another design I made, and again, this one is also made using the simple stitch. You can see that the simple stitch was made in the panels, just like this panel, and then cross-stitch designs cross-stitch down those panels, and just a simple border going down the side. The next Afghan is also used and started with the simple stitch for the panels, and that is the same panel here that you're seeing here. And it all begins with the simple stitch when you want to do those cross-stitch designs. So those are all some fascinating samples of some of the beautiful work you can do by just learning some of these simple Tunisian stitches. And again, today's video is only to teach you how to do this simple basic stitch. And again, look at how many gorgeous patterns you can make with just doing this simple stitch. You can also use this stitch and do the whole blanket in the stitch and then cross stitch whatever you want on it. So all kinds of possibilities. But first we have to start with learning how to start and how to learn the first basic stitch of a Tunisian crochet pattern stitch. So let's begin. Today I'm just using Red Heart Super Saver. This is Aruba C, color number 505. It's a 4 medium weight yarn. And I'm also using a long Susan Bates Afghan hook, and this is size 10J, a 6mm hook to learn today. Now these hooks are no longer available with the inline hooks. These are very old hooks. You cannot get them anymore. The newer hooks are tapered at the end, so very hard to find these hooks. I usually find mine on eBay, and as soon as I find them, I buy them because that's how rare they are. So if anybody sees any on eBay and you don't want to buy them, send me the link to my email address because I just can never have enough of these longer Afghan hooks. To begin, I already tied my yarn around my hook. Now you can use whatever method you prefer. And I'm just going to start with a small sample and chain 10. You're going to yarn over the hook and you're going to pull through the loop on your hook. That's your first chain. Yarn over, pull through, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So first I'm going to show you the easy way to put your loops on. Now you can do it this way, but when you're putting a border in, the second way I show you is the best way to do it. It's a little more time consuming, but you'll be able to see the difference of what I mean. So to start the Tunisian simple stitch, you're going to skip this first chain. You skip this loop on your hook and you skip the first chain. You're going to insert your hook into that next chain. You're going to yarn over and pull through the chain. You're going to keep your loop on the hook. You're going to insert into the next chain, yarn over and pull through the chain. Insert into the next chain, and I'm just going under the top loop, yarn over and pull through. Insert into the next chain just under the top loop, yarn over and pull through. And you can see that I'm keeping all my loops on the hook. I'm going to continue working, insert into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, and I'm just going to continue over to the end of my chain. So go ahead and work right along with me. Insert into the next chain, yarn over and pull through. You keep the loops on your hook. Insert into that next chain, which is the last chain, yarn over and pull through. Now with Tunisian simple stitch, if you make a chain 10, you should have 10 loops on your hook when you work across the first half of the row. So the first half of the row, we are working all the way across to the end of the chain, and the second half of the row, we're going to take all the loops off and come back to the end of where we started. So we chain 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. You should have 10 loops on your hook. So now let's take our loops off the hook. You're going to yarn over and you're going to pull through one loop only. When you begin taking those loops off, you start by going through one loop. To take the remaining chains off, you're going to yarn over and pull through 2. Yarn over and pull through 2. And you're going to continue that all the way until you get to the end of the row. Yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, continue until you're at the end. And when you get to the very end, you'll yarn over, you'll pull through 2, and you'll still have one loop on your hook. This loop counts as the first loop of the next row. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do row 2. I'm going to finish off, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to do that first row a completely different way. So to start the next row, again, that first loop counts as the first stitch of the next row, and you can see that this loop lines up with that first stitch. You're going to insert your hook underneath the next vertical strand of yarn. So this is your stitch here. You're just going to take your hook and just go right underneath that strand of yarn that runs up and down. You're going to yarn over the hook and pull it through that strand of yarn. You're going to keep that loop on your hook. You're going to look for the next vertical strand. That's your next stitch right here where that yarn's running up and down. Insert your hook underneath that strand of yarn, yarn over, and pull through that strand of yarn. You're going to keep that loop on your hook, and you can start seeing how the loops on your hook align with the stitch below. You're going to insert your hook under the next vertical strand, and when you're looking at your work, you can see how those vertical strands line up across your row. Insert underneath the next vertical strand, yarn over, and pull through. Insert underneath the next vertical strand, yarn over, and pull through. You're keeping all your loops on the hook. I'm going to keep working. Insert underneath the next vertical stitch, yarn over, pull through, keep that loop on your hook. Insert into the next stitch, under that vertical strand of yarn for that stitch, yarn over and pull through. You look at your work, you can see those stitches lined right up, going up and down your work. Insert underneath the next vertical strand of yarn, that stitch, yarn over and pull through. Find your next vertical stitch, insert just underneath the stitch. You don't go clear to the back, you're only going underneath that one strand of yarn. Yarn over and pull through. We're over at the end of the row. We're over to our last stitch, so we're going to insert our hook into the top loop, and then you're going to go into the one behind. You're going to yarn over and pull through both loops. Now make sure you pull up on that loop and keep this last loop loose. If you get too tight and you really pull that and keep that tight and you do that first stitch, what will happen is this side will start pulling down. So when you do that last stitch, make sure you go in both loops, yarn over and pull through, and make sure you do it loosely. So now we're going to go ahead and take our loops off. Now you always take the loops off in the same manner for this particular stitch pattern. You're going to yarn over and pull through one loop only when you start to the return pass. You're going to yarn over and then pull through two. Yarn over and pull through two. You're going to continue with yarn over and pull through two until you take all the loops off your hook and one loop remains. So we're getting over to the end. We're going to yarn over, pull through the last two loops, and we have one loop on our hook, and this loop counts as the first stitch of the next row. So when you look at your work, I need to sit this down. When you look at your work, you can see how those stitches align on top of each other. They're just going to create that pattern. So you can see here, you can see your stitches are running on top of each other. They line right up, going up each row. Now our sample's really tiny, but you can see the same thing is happening with our stitches. They're running one right on top of the other. So now you have your project to the length you want. Now I know we only did 2 rows, but you can continue making a longer sample if you wish. So now we're getting ready, and I need to show you how to take your loops off. So you do not want to leave your work with the stitches sticking up. You want to do that final row and make them look nicer and have a nicer edge. So let me show you the edge. Here is my clown block, and when you look at the work, you can see that I finished it off and I put this top on here. So when you look at the sample here, you see there's no stitch tops. It's a little harder to work those stitches. So what I do is I go ahead and slip stitch in my stitches across. It finishes this row and gives you a really nice stitch top to work that border. So let me show you how to do that. It's very simple. You're going to insert your hook into that next vertical stitch. You're going to yarn over and pull through that stitch just like you were making the stitch. Instead of keeping that loop on the hook, you're going to pull that loop right through the loop on your hook. So when you work this across, you only end up with one loop at a time when you're doing your stitches. So insert into that next vertical bar, yarn over, pull through that stitch just like you're making your stitch, and then pull that loop through the loop on your hook. And you can see those stitches forming across your work. Insert into that next vertical stitch, yarn over, pull through that stitch, and then pull through the loop on your hook. Insert into the next vertical stitch, yarn over, pull through that stitch, and then pull through the loop on your hook. Insert into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through that stitch, and pull through the loop on your hook. And again, you can see how those stitches are forming on top of your work. Insert into the next stitch. I'm going to work this right across, yarn over, pull through the stitch, and pull through the loop on your hook. Insert into the next vertical stitch, yarn over, pull through the stitch, and pull through the loop on your hook. We're almost finished. Insert into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through that stitch, and pull through the loop on your hook. When you get to the last stitch, you're going to work in the same method. You're going to go under both loops because you're at that last stitch. So you only do that on the last stitch. You go under those 2 edge stitches, yarn over, pull through loosely, and then pull through the loop on your hook. And that's all there is to doing the simple, basic, simple stitch in Tunisian crochet. You have that top loop where you see this beautiful stitched edging, and then you see the stitches on the side, which when you work that border up the side, very easy to find the stitches, very easy to find them across the top. And when you go down the side, you also see the stitches. But wait, look at the bottom. It's very hard to see your stitches on the bottom. You have your chain and you don't have this real defined stitch placement where you can see those stitches easily. So when you're a new crocheter, I suggest you work in the back bumps. So let me take a few minutes and show you what I mean and teach you how to do the back bumps. So when you turn your work over, it will have the same look on top as it will on the bottom. So let me show you that method, and that is the preferred method, but you can choose whichever method you prefer when you learn this stitch. So let me cut this off and remake my chain 10. So go ahead and get your chain 10 made, and I'll be right back and show you the second method. I'm back. I'm going to pull my hook out, and I just want to get up close and show you. Here is our chain. Now the first sample we worked into the top loop of the chain. For the second sample, if you turn your chain, you're going to see these bumps, is what we call the back bumps, and that is the horizontal stitch that you see in the center of the back of each chain across your work. So I hope you can see that. This is the front of your chain that you see when you have it on your hook. You have to turn your chain to see these back horizontal stitches right in the center of the chains. So let me show you the method of how to get those stitches on the bottom of your work. We're going to begin and we're going to skip that first chain, and you're going to turn your work and you're going to look for that back bump of that next stitch. So it's sticking up. You just want to insert your hook into that back bump. It's a little bit tricky to get this started. Now I'm trying to look through a monitor and try to find my bump without actually looking at my work. So there's the first bump. We're going to yarn over and pull through that back bump. So here's the beginning of your chain. If it's facing you, this is the front of the chain. You want to go to the back of the chain and look for that horizontal stitch running across that chain. Insert your hook right through that horizontal stitch. You're going to yarn over and pull through that stitch. And again, when you're looking at your work, you can see this is your chain and you're finding your stitch on the back of the work. I hope that's showing up. Let me get just a little closer. I'm not sure if this blue is showing up good enough. So here's our work and we're looking at it. There's your chain. You're going to flip that chain and you're going to look for that next horizontal stitch. It runs sideways. It runs across your work. You're going to insert your hook underneath that sideways stitch that runs sideways, back and forth across the back of that work. You're going to yarn over and pull through. And like I said, this is a little more time consuming. You're going to look at your chain, flip your chain over, look for that next horizontal stitch, the one going back and forth. Insert your hook underneath that stitch. And again, this first row is a little more time consuming, but it is so well worth doing it this way. You're going to yarn over and pull through that back bump. And you can see how now these stitches are forming on the bottom of your work. You're going to flip your chain, find that next horizontal stitch, insert underneath that stitch, yarn over and pull through. Here's your chain. You're going to turn it so you're on the back side. You're going to look for that next horizontal stitch. Right here it is. Insert your hook just underneath that one strand of yarn. Yarn over and pull through that stitch. There's your chain. You're going to turn it so you can see the back of the chain. Here's your next horizontal stitch. Insert underneath that horizontal stitch, just the one strand only. Yarn over and pull through. Find your next stitch. Here's your next chain. Flip your chain over, find that next horizontal stitch. Insert underneath that one strand only. Yarn over and pull through. Now we're over to our last chain, and sometimes this last chain can really give you a little bit of a hard time because that horizontal bar sometimes likes to sink down in there. You just have to make sure you find that stitch, insert underneath that last stitch, that last horizontal stitch running sideways, yarn over and pull through. And again, when you look at your work, you can see how it creates that wonderful stitch where you can really see the definition of those stitches. The other one, you can see you don't get that definition. All you have is the bottom of the chain. So which one do you think you prefer, which method? So let me go ahead and take the loops off. You're going to yarn over, you're going to pull through one loop only, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through two. Yarn over and pull through two. And you're just going to continue with yarn over and pull through two. Yarn over, pull through two, continue until you take all loops off your hook and you have one loop remaining. You have one loop remaining, and that counts as the first stitch of the next row. And that is the two methods of doing that first row of where you either have those stitches or you're going to end up with not seeing those stitches and having just the edge of the chain. It's all in what you prefer when you do this stitch pattern. So that is it. Now for this one, you work it the same way as the first sample. You can just click back on the video and start with row 2 and continue until you get it the size you want. Now with Tunisian simple stitch, there is no multiple. When you do this stitch, you just make a chain to the width of whatever you want to make. So if you want to make a panel, you just crochet the width of whatever you want your panel width to be, and you start your stitching. And these are the samples I had to show you. Now this is a little more advanced pattern here where you have to learn another skill of how to add those colors and create the design. We'll get into more detail and do other Tunisian projects, but the first part of learning Tunisian crochet is this very simple stitch. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing all the many possibilities that you can do with this pattern. So thank you everyone for stopping by today and learning the Tunisian simple stitch. With everything, you have to start with that first step, and this is the first step of learning how to do the Tunisian simple stitch crochet. So I will bring you more and more videos. I do have other Tunisian stitches videos on my channel. If you want to check them out, go ahead, and if you're a more experienced crocheter, you can check out all those Tunisian stitches I have to offer on there. And in the meantime, I will be working on more videos and bringing you more explanations of how to add color to your work and how to change colors and all kinds of possibilities with this stitch. This pattern is available as a free download on our website. Just go to our website, click Stitch of the Week, scroll down until you find the Tunisian simple stitch, and you can print that pattern out and follow right along with the video. And I also have the link in the description box. Happy crocheting, everyone!